Hi everyone, I'm Irene, this is Perpetually Paperback, and today I'm going to be talking about my June wrap-up. So how's everyone doing? I hope everyone is doing really well. I hope you're staying cool out there. I happen to live in, so there's a heat wave going on, but I live in the Central Valley and it's kind of always this hot in the summer. Not this early, but it's definitely our normal kind of hot. So I hope everyone that's not used to it is dealing with it as best as possible. Anyway, so today I'm going to be doing my June wrap up. I read 5 books in the month of June, and I'm just going to start from the order that I read them in. So the first book I read in the month of June was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'd been reading this one. This one actually took me quite a while to read. It follows the story of Daisy Jones and the band The Six as each of them kind of come together into this band and make this album called Aurora, which was this incredible album from the height of the 70s, super rock and roll. It has LA, it feels like a lot of bands put together, which I think actually Taylor Jenkins Reid did base it on more than just one band. It has Fleetwood Mac vibes, but also, I don't know, it was kind of cool. It was very cool in the 70s rock and roll vibe. So the way that the story is written, it's told in an interview format, which I actually really, really liked because I've always loved reading interviews of rock bands or just interviews in general. I like hearing people's own voices. However, I found that about halfway through the book, it got really tedious and all of the characters felt one-dimensional. Oh, for starters, everyone in this book is an asshole. At best, they're jerks. I didn't necessarily hate that so much because they're all really young and doing a lot of drugs and stupid shit. So it kind of made sense for their personalities and stuff. The storyline of Daisy, who's kind of got this somewhat of a love story situation. There's a whole lot of strife in this one, more than relationships actually take place. It felt like nothing actually happened. I also found it kind of difficult that Taylor Jenkins Reid actually gives you all of the lyrics to the album Aurora in the back of the book. But because it wasn't real, it's not a real band, it's not a real album, I couldn't put music to it. I couldn't hear that in my head, and it kind of took away from my enjoyment of it, I think. So ultimately for me, it was 3 stars. At the end of it, it took me a long time to get through. I got 75% through the book and then I just couldn't finish it. I was really struggling to finish it because I just kind of felt like nothing was happening. And then the thing that took place at the end, at the very, very end, really actually bothered me. I really didn't actually like the letter at the end. I feel like it was a complete departure from her character, and I didn't like that. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on Daisy Jones and the Six. I actually have another video of an author taste test on Taylor Jenkins Reid, along with Evelyn Hugo and a couple others coming out later in the month. So check that out if you're interested. After that, I signed up for this book club at home, and it's been, so I really like book clubs because I like other people's selections of books. I don't necessarily like what they pick, but I do like that I'm reading books outside of what I would go for myself. And so, that being said, that book was Ghosted by Rosie Walsh. This book is exactly what it says it is. This was, if you're looking for something to read on the beach, this would actually be not a bad one. It's kind of fun. It's not real heavy in any capacity. It reads really quickly. And at one point, you just kind of want to find out what's happening. So this book follows Sarah. And in the first week, we already find out that she's been ghosted. This dude stops responding to her, and his name is Eddie. They spend this incredible week together in her home, where originally is the UK, but she actually lives in LA at this time. And they have this incredible, 2 people whose souls connect type meeting. And they spend this incredible week together. Well, then all of a sudden he's supposed to go on vacation and he just ghosts her. She then proceeds to spend a way too long period of time trying to track him down, stalking his Facebook, doing all the normal stalker things. She gets really crazy with it. So this is the part for me, I was just kind of like, I don't like the idea of her actions being okay because they were just so crazy, I think. But then you find out that there's a little bit more to the story, and there kind of becomes this whole whodunit type storyline of like, is Eddie who he really says he is? What's the background behind it? And during this time that she's kind of trying to figure this out, she starts bearing her soul. And they end up having this interesting connection at some point that I don't want to give it away because it'll give away the entire story. And it was actually really, really entertaining after a while. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It was cute. It was perfect to bring to, like, you know, on your vacation for the summer. You're not going to think about it too hard. You're going to enjoy it. That's kind of how I felt about it. Will I remember it at the end of the year? I don't know. But that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. So I'd say it was 3 stars. After that, I threw in a Julie Garwood, The Wedding. I'm actually really enjoying Julie Garwood. She writes different types of fantasy. I've read her historical fantasy specifically. I don't know why she writes a lot of Highlander things. But yeah, this one was just great. It basically follows Brenna, who she is being sent to a certain laird by her father to marry him. And during that time, she's intercepted by this other one who basically takes her and marries her. It's cute because she actually met him when she was young and she proposed to him 3 times. She was bound to find a husband and she found one. And he remembered that and basically took her offer up when she was a little bit older. So she was never really not into it, kind of. But turns out he actually saves her from a really horrible person, and their storyline kind of comes together. What I really like about Julie Garwood is it is historical romance, but all of her stories actually have a real plot. They're basically, this laird in particular is trying to figure out who his arch enemy is. There's a mother-in-law and a brother-in-law that come into play. The only thing I really didn't like about this one is that the actual male protagonist, the husband of Brenna, spends majority of his time away from her. So all of the interactions, you get his story, you get her story as the narrative is flowing. And they're just never together. They're together like 3 times. They're basically together to have sex and that's it. And bad shit happens to Brenna that really could have been avoided by him just being there. But also it's historical romance. I should maybe preface this with, I really like this genre. I really enjoy it, but it often is pretty formulaic, and I don't know. I don't necessarily expect incredible things. I just want to have a good time, and I did. So that was Julie Garwood, The Wedding. Then, so my boyfriend reads a lot of fantasy, and I have another friend who also reads a lot of fantasy. They sort of read in the same vein. My boyfriend and I like to read certain books together. So this is one that we've had on our radar for a while, and finally all 3 of us read it together. It was a really good time, so thank you, Ian, for doing that with us. We're going to be continuing on with the series, and that is A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. This is my first Joe Abercrombie. I definitely am gonna, I don't know why I started. I've heard that you're not supposed to read this one without having read the first trilogy. I did it anyway because, you know, I'm a rebel. Whatever. I actually enjoyed it without having much prior knowledge of any of the others. I don't know that I can necessarily describe this plot to you because it was such a hugely character-driven story. So I'm going to start there. It basically follows 4 people. There's Leo, who is of the North, Leo Dambrock, and Rika, who is the Wolfsman's daughter? I think it's something like that. I don't remember exactly. But Rika is the only one that kind of has the far sight, which in this book I would actually say is probably the only thing really magic related. It is a fantasy, but there really wasn't, technically it's grimdark. I actually didn't necessarily find it particularly grim-darky. I found it to be a very politically driven story. The opposite side of Leo and Rika is Savine, who is Savine Tanglocta, so she is Glocta's daughter, and Prince Orso, who is the king's son, essentially. So it's these four as they're kind of they're sort of at the point where they're being integrated a lot more into the politics of society. They're given a lot more, it's the point where they've stopped being like adolescents and kind of dumb and just doing shit out of enjoyment, and now moving into the life of responsibility that they now have. During this time, Savine, for different business interests, ends up going to a town where there is a coup that takes place, and that's kind of the central point, or the central plot there, the central action, I would say, that happens in this story. But it is not what is specifically, this plot is actually really difficult to describe because things happen, but we're in the same world, and we almost end up kind of at the same spot. There was a really good cliffhanger at the end there. So we're definitely, we're gonna take a little bit of a break before the second one, but wow, you can see in this book that I have, like, I'm a huge tabber. There were parts where we'd go back and we'd reread certain lines, and like, I'm a big highlighter for like good lines. This book was wow. I think he's actually one of my favorite authors that I found this year, and am very, very excited to go back and read. I actually am, so because I heard this is grimdark, I don't know, I was expecting something like really awful and difficult to read. It was fine. It was totally, I don't know that it was neither grim or dark. It seems like in this book they're moving towards it seems like magic is kind of out of style, and they're going into a more industrial era, maybe. They kind of talk about certain things like that. I don't know, I like the direction, I liked the characters, I really love character-driven stories. This is all it was, and I really enjoyed it. So that was absolutely 5 stars. I can't wait to read the first trilogy. This one is The Age of Madness. So this is the first book in the Age of Madness. I'm gonna do a couple videos on that, about some theories that I have, what's happening, what's going on, what I think is gonna happen based on just having read this one. We'll see. After that, the same book club for Ghosted ended up having another meeting really quickly, and that book was Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. I'm so glad it got picked. As you can see, it was one I already had and planned to get to, so that's like even better. I loved this book. This book was so good. Fredrik Backman, I was describing it to them and I was like, I feel like Fredrik Backman is almost like Sour Patch Kids. Like, he can like punch you in the face but also give you a hug at the same time. Like, and this one wasn't so much that, but it does deal with more difficult subjects than what I thought. Pretty much it opens up with this bank robbery gone wrong, where there's a hostage situation that takes place at an open house, which all sounds really ridiculous, and honestly, the book is really ridiculous, but at its core, I would say it's a story about people in the way that we judge them, and it was really cool how Backman actually he wrote it in a way that that the reader would make certain judgments based on the characters, and he just blows that out of the water in such an awesome way that was so good. So it follows this bank robber who takes all these people hostage, and then these 2 police officers, a father and his son, who are trying to unravel the case and basically figure out what's going on. So you're getting parts of interviews, and you're also getting different perspectives. In certain parts, you get flashbacks for each character. So as you are reading the story, he's challenging every single assumption that you've made about every single judgment. I don't even want to say assumption, every single judgment that you have made about these people. And it just ends in such a beautiful way. I don't know that it necessarily solves anything, but it gives humanity to that time when I think all of us can say at one point or another in our lives that you got to a point where you didn't know how you got there. Or you could see someone and just say, I think about that all the time when there's a huge homeless issue in my city at the moment. Not that that's not everywhere, but it's particularly bad here. And that's one of the things I think all the time is just like, what leads you to get to that point? And this book does a really beautiful job of showing how just one bad decision can get you to that place, and how one good decision can make a change and can make something different happen. It was so incredibly well written. It was so beautifully introspective. It was emotional. It was funny. Like, it was genuinely funny. I don't know if anyone follows Fredrik Backman on Instagram, I really recommend you do so. He's fantastic. He's hilarious. And I feel like his normal voice is the closest to this book, I would say. So this was absolutely 5 stars. I just loved it so much. I would really love to talk to you about these books. If anyone has other recommendations, somewhat like Joe Abercrombie, I would love to hear it. I really like fantasy, and that one's just, it's been amazing to read an author who writes so well, and I think I did that. This month was awesome. After Fredrik Backman and Joe Abercrombie, it was a stellar month. It was an absolutely stellar month. Anyway, that's it for me today. Let me know what you guys thought about these books, or if these are on your TBR list. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.